morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And get started. I'm Jeff Morney, Executive Director for CAG. We are excited to be in our new space as of about 3 weeks ago. Since 1975, we've been based in the High Point Theater. So we're excited to be at Congdon Yards. We have wonderful gallery space, these terrific classrooms. This is our first artist talk in our new space. I hope to do this on a regular basis with different artists going through to exhibit. So, very briefly, and make yourselves at home more coffee. Please eat those donuts, because if you don't, I might. So we're going to have Barbara and Bryant speak in here. Then we're going to get up and have a quick walk through the gallery. Okay. So Barbara is Barbara Tyroler is based in Chapel Hill. And she is many things. She's a photographic educator from also the University of Maryland, University of Chapel Hill, and Duke. She's also an educational therapist and parent educator, an editorial photographer, and just a photographer extraordinary. This is the second time we've worked with Barbara. It's thrilled to have her back. Then we have Bryant Holsenbeck, which is she's just into her own entity. I don't know how we describe her. She's an environmental artist who uses the debris to create her masterpieces. And she has taught me a lot and will teach her a lot too. So we're going to start, I think Barbara's going to go first, followed by Bryant. And we're glad you're here.
So I'm going to show you 2 videos. They're brief. And then after that, we'll do quickly Q&A. She's going to go cut after a certain amount of time so that we don't go on and on. Then we'll do Brian's, and then we'll all go look at work.
Began photographing underwater with my daughter as she was learning to swim and loving the feeling of submersion. My father, around age 80, refused to surrender to osteoarthritis. Then, while recuperating from a near-death cardiac event, he taught himself to swim, using water to soothe his body. Over the years, I have photographed people in every kind of water: swimming pools, bathtubs, hot tubs, ponds, lakes, and oceans. I have photographed newborns and the elderly, people of all ages, stages, shapes, abilities, and challenges. Those who use water for health and wellness, some purely for relaxation or stress relief. Others for exhilaration, recreation, and play. And some who simply love to float. I have spent time with first-generation pool dwellers whose parents and grandparents were banned for decades from using whites-only public swimming pools, and thus never learned how to swim, nor taught their own children and grandchildren how to feel safe and comfortable in water, and who are only now learning how to trust their bodies in the water. I have photographed friends and family members who love me and are simply doing me a favor, posing patiently while I explore creative approaches and new techniques. In the years of bending the margins between professional, personal and creative pursuits, I have found a passageway to focus and integrate my life's work in what I have come to call the water portrait. My father, who had such difficulty in later life walking on land, often referred to swimming beneath the surface as flying, with limbs for wings. Graceful shared distortion makes human shapes almost unrecognizable. We are all distorted in water. As strange and unsettling as some of these images may at first seem, they help us recognize each other, however different we are, as fully human. As age and my thoughts deepen, I still enjoy the challenge to create skillful, meaningful work, but perhaps beneath the craft and metaphor, I might finally be free to consider beauty, and on its own terms. I use water as the backdrop for exploring reflection and light, where bodies become bits and pieces of abstracted forms, or bursts of multi-layered refractions frozen in the flow of the moment, capture memories within a human story that will linger and regenerate with the passage of time.
Being in the water for me is about getting out of my brain into my body, and then out of my body and into the feelings of the water, surrounded by arms and legs and skin, and feeling the rhythm of my breathing, and then forgetting about that, having thoughts that come about. Sometimes I go swimming so I can actually think, and water's the place to do that, either in the bathtub or in the shower or in the hot tub or in the swimming pool, just to be able to work out really hard and then relax and then forget about the strokes. And other times I could stop thinking and just be in the water. Having the camera in the water has been really fun because I can be watching the water, I could be watching the designs and patterns, and doing portraits of my family in the water has been really rewarding because I can be together with them in the water, but then I can be photographing and have memories of us together. Being able to share the experiences of being in the water with my father has been really special. Being able to see him enjoy his body and feel relaxed and soothed by the water has been wonderful. My father taught himself how to swim when he was in his 70s, and he was experiencing some discomfort in walking. Sam and I were with him when he first began going underwater.
There's a fascinating new measurement. After you do exercise, the time it takes to recover from the tachycardia, the rapid heart rate of the exercise, to the slower rate that you have when you rest. The amount of time is an index of autonomic nervous system functioning. And we have found the longer the time interval, the higher the death rate over time. Working hard to overcome the stiffness and the limitation of motion induced by 78 years of age and gout, and most difficult of all, spinal stenosis, which took away my capability of walking, my capability of being outdoors, my capability of moving my body to any great degree, not to mention the extraordinary pain associated with any weight impact on my legs up to my lower back. This gives me flexibility, the emotional reactions, the levitation phenomenon, the ability to overcome gravity, the ability to float, the ability to glide. I am now able to do many of those things.
When my daughter was born, we took her swimming while she was still crawling. She took her first steps on the beach. Sam really loves the water, although as a young woman, she treats swimming more as a sport now than she did when she was a child. As a parent, I taught her how to swim because I wanted her to love the water.
The water was something that I always shared with people. Like being passed back and forth between my parents in the pool as I was learning how to swim. Swimming for me is not about this kind of ethereal mermaid type of experience. I'm very disciplined about it. I swim in straight lines up and down the lap lane. And I feel invigorated by that discipline and then the health that comes from that. I'm aware at the back of my mind how the water has been a space for both of us to really take care of our bodies. And I appreciate getting to share that. I ended up getting a really, really strong sense of home. The feeling of being in a place with mom behind her camera and dad behind his camera. And I'm so accustomed to being in this space of cameras and moving in front of those cameras. Being in that space was also like a ceremony, like a ritual, like a family meeting. There's a phrase in Chinese, 来去分明, as clear and direct as coming and going. That's sort of been a rhythm that I've been working with for the past couple years. Coming home, and it was also sort of preparing to go back. And that's something that I think is just beautiful, and it also makes me really sad too, because I know that things are changing and that the time that I have with Mom and Dad is smaller. And as it shrinks, it becomes really sacred to me. And I was celebrating that time.
Video was made 20-some years ago, and so everything has changed. Like, I'm almost the age of my father now. Do y'all have any questions? Yes?
How did you get involved specifically with the water? In the sense of, as an artist, we all get drawn to something and portray it, but it is unusual.
It happened a long, long, long time ago. I don't really know. I mean, I guess if you're a water person and you're a visual artist, you just sort of pull them together, right? Because of that sense of reflection and distortion. And I think whatever medium you express yourself in, you sort of bring together all the things that you love to do. So I loved the water, and I loved the visual component of the camera. So it's kind of what happened.
Yes, you have a grand feel for design, but you also have a great beauty. How much manipulation of your photos occurs?
So the water is the ground distortion. So in the water, when I first started going underwater with, holding the nose and things, that was distortion because being underwater. But later on, when I didn't want to go underwater and hold my nose, I used these reflection panels. So they're like these malleable acrylic panels. And when I was teaching, I had students that would hold panels for me. And you just bend them, and it sort of enables you to be looking down. I don't do any Photoshop manipulation with I do a lot of that with a different series, but with the water, it's all distorted through the water and the reflections. In the video, there were multi-layers, and that's where you got the person swimming on land with the data embedded on the surface of the body. But generally, that manipulation happens in the environment, for this series anyway. Yes?
I just have to say they were quite beautiful, and I loved the sound of the water the whole time. I mean, you really are multimedia, because it's so given that you don't even think about it, but right, you put us in the water with that sound.
Yes?
Do you develop these yourself?
Yes. I mean, the digital work is really the computer.
Yeah.
When I did film, and a lot of the early ones were filmed, it was developed in the darkroom. Yeah. The video is, a whole other thing.
I think we have time for one more question.
Just one question, real quick. I see multiple inputs coming into your mind, your artistic mind. I see motion, I see texture, I see colors. Is there one particular thing that grabbed you when you first began, that drew you into doing what you're doing today?
Portraits. They're all portraits, abstracted in some form. I'm not excited just about pictures of water, movement, but I like to have the person in them. And so lots of times the colors come from what they're wearing. So if it's commissioned, then I'll say, wear something that you love that's your color. So you'll see a lot of orange and purple in my work, and those are not my colors, but it's the color of the person that's in the water. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
It's a real honor to be here, and it's an honor to be here sharing with Barbara Tyroler, who's been somebody. We have a picture of us in 1972 working together. We were both teaching classes at the art school in Harvard, and we're still at it, just like we were then, and it's busy as ever. When I first knew Barbara, if we can turn the lights off now and I'll figure out how to go forward. Here's my forward. I was a basket maker. And here I am with my truck full of stuff, getting ready to go to my first craft show. And I was teaching basketry at that time. And after a while, I started thinking, this is 30 years. Once you figured something out, then you have to go back and think, well, what else could I do? So I started making those, let me go backwards 1 second. Once I figured out that structure, so I keep thinking hats are made that way, you can put them on your head, there's your oak pods. I started hunting and gathering because as a basket maker, that's what they do. And I thought if I'm a contemporary basket maker, I'm gonna hunt and gather and use what's in the environment, which right there is ochre pods and pine cones. But I began to see that there's all this stuff that we throw away. Chopsticks. That's a birdhouse with chopsticks. So my job, really pretty much my whole artist life, is to see things that people are throwing away and think, how can I transform them and give them life again and help you to think about that yourself. Credit cards. The first credit cards were made for Bush's, the second Bush's Christmas tree. He hired people from all over. He asked artists from all over the country to make birds of their state, and our arts council asked me. They said, "Oh, we want you to do something different." And so these are credit cards given to me by a credit counselor who was chopping up credit cards. This is my first public project. Plastic bottles and bales, and here's my team. There's plastic bottles out there. The stuff that we throw away that really does not go away. Get it? Where's away? You know, away is being buried, but it is not going away. So this is, I made these in front of the Arts Council, and I sold them at Stonehenge. It was going to look like Stonehenge. It didn't. But anyways, my first experience with public art, and people are going to push back because people don't really like to know what they have produced. My first installation, that's my nail for a year, plastic silverware for a year, and my bottle caps for a year. And so I've continued from there, both working with the public and making art on my own. So this is a project with shoes. We made labyrinths out of shoes, and I told the kids to write on the shoes what they thought, the soles of the shoes, what they thought adults should be paying attention to, and that they weren't. So I want every mom to pick up the kids after school. Is that when they save the world? I can't quite take care of the world. Yeah. So that for a while. Now out there, you see some of my animals, and my animals. I'm very interested in the environment, and the animals are surviving there. I'm so glad whenever I hear a crow calling. But I want to show you that they're made out of wire and plastic bags. Those are the ubiquitous things. And this is the way one gets made. What it looks like in the end. Crows are everywhere. They're survivors. Chooks, in Australia they call chickens chooks, because how do you call a chicken anyway? And so this is figuring out the plastic bags. I was in San Miguel de Allende. There were signs, bring your plastic bags. These retired nurses from Canada were rolling them up and stuffing them into mattresses for kids who were sleeping on the floor. And that's how I got the idea to use them in my animals. Kids making stuff. I love to work, and always making baskets too, with found objects. Now, here's the thing about making with found objects, or just making. Kids know how to do this, and we as adults forget to be free. We forget. So this is my not my godson, but my great nephew. And so he's sitting in the back seat, and he says, "Mom, I made a squirrel." Do you see it? Had a stuffy band in the back seat. Here we're back to the bottle caps. All those are bottle caps. This is the largest one I ever made. And each one of those bottle caps is a mark of food eaten. My undergraduate degree at UNC is in sociology. This was at the atrium at in Charleston, College of Charleston, and it was the first. And you see all the boxes around there. The most important thing about these is keeping them sorted. People say, "Where'd you get all those?" And if you just every time, if there's something that you eat all the time, you know, I mean, maybe I get like 50 or 60 red milk bottle caps a year. Put them in the thing, and all your neighbors do that. Before long, you've got it. It wasn't that long to get these, it was just constant. This person right here, I don't know whether you collect for me, Helen, but she's done a lot of helping me. She's sitting there. And, but her friend, and my friend has. So these are all marks of food eaten. And you can see how they're dimensional. And so these were like the Tibetan monks made mandalas. I was working off of them, but and they're like a flower, they bloom and then they're gone, and I use them over again. Only I've given them all away. This was in the mall in Winston-Salem, trying to use all my bottle cap stuff. This is given to the kids, and how are they going to make one? No designs from me, and they decided to use themselves. And then I graduated to plastic bottles. The first one that I made one here in Winston-Salem, the first one I made was in Midland, Texas, the center of the Permian Basin, where we're getting all our inland oil, and there are pump jacks everywhere, and they can't drink their water. It's called Purified, a river in the desert. And you had one like this. Takes a community to do these. Also, I do a lot of weaving projects where I fold it and then the kids weave them all together. These are all community things. I love this bird. A lot of times you can't really get a picture of the kids, so this is the principal. This is on the Outer Banks, the last one I did right before COVID. We're working on a shark right there. Did this 3D one right here with birds. Back to the chooks. And so about 10 years ago, I decided that I was going to try to stop using single-use plastic, because I thought, wait a minute, sociology in me knows that it wasn't that long ago when we didn't have all this stuff. And actually styrofoam, I think, really came to the foreground floating submarines. And you know, we make these things, and then they're not biodegradable. What are we going to do with them? This is me picking up stuff on the at the Outer Banks. The first day I decided I was going to live without single-use plastic. And I ended up writing a blog about it for quite some time, and there was this book that I forgot to bring Jeff. It's made into that, but can anybody think of the hardest thing about, think about what the hardest thing about not having single-use plastic in your life would be. More plastic from the ocean. People say, I don't see it, but it's there. And if, I spot styrofoam in a minute, because it breaks down, and you know where it goes. If you talk to anybody, any ranger that's on the coast, they say they pick up balloons all the time. I cringe when I see those balloons. Do not let a balloon in the air, please. This is a sea chicken made from all the stuff that I pulled out of the ocean in when I was in Hawaii, and in Hawaii is where they run wild. This is taken in Australia for the Australian Biennale, and this is done by the Aboriginal folks that lived in the northern Australia, which is where the tropics are, and where all the ships come back and forth, and so they're just inundated by beach plastic like you see out there, inundated. And so they're making, and so you can see like the monofilament that I got out there, they've bound it up, and so they're making things out of it. You can't use it up, but you can use some of it to make people aware. And you know what this is? This is my most recent installation. Thank you very much, Jeff. And then I'm just going to show you really quickly some other people. This is Ai Weiwei. He used, this was in a church in West Side in New York. He used all the detritus from building buildings in China, and they wanted something made out of crystal, and he said, no, I'm using this detritus. And so he quit his job and just, come on. This is Wendy Wiriyama. She is applied to the elephant. She's tying stuff together with the maps of, can you see what this is? We make carpets. You know, it's another people doing installations. You know, you see what those are? This is one of my Elanatsui. There's one of these in the North Carolina Museum of Art, and he asks villages to collect. A lot of it is it's all metal caps and the stuff the metal that's around liquor bottles. This is in Africa. And one of his students who works with bottles himself. I saw this young man speak at UNC, and so he's standing there and he's looking at us and he said, wait a minute, you're buying this water when you can drink out of that fountain. Because in Africa you can't, because the water's so polluted. But our water's not polluted, but we're taking the shortcut and paying a lot more for it. And there's my bottle over there. Anyway, you can carry your own bottle because we can drink our water here. I love this. This was his graduate. Africans don't buy those bottles because they're so expensive, but they need to drink, so that you can get water in plastic bags and you just bite the end of it and go like this. And so he made raincoats out of all the plastic bags, which is kind of funny because it doesn't rain very much. But he's brilliant. So there you go. Just something gets old and people throw it out, and so it gets in some way transformed. I showed you how I made my animals, and I thought I was so original. And so I got to Australia, and I discovered that the Aboriginal folks are just taking yarn and whatever they've got and making animals too. So nothing's really original. You can do that too. Let's see, Greensburg, it's called Reconsidered Goods. This is the first one that I knew of in Australia, and we've got, anyway, those are things I hate. And I think I'm just on. I'm done. I'm done right now. that was the parade at the scrap exchange. That was their float. The elephant. Isn't that great? Anyway, but stuff you can do. That's stuff we normally throw away. So I'm done. And we're going to go out there and I just encourage you to think about what you've got at home that you don't need anymore, and you can take it to Reconsidered Goods. You don't have to throw it away. And also, I encourage you, think twice before you buy. Do you need it? We have so much stuff in this country. We're so rich. And what do you think the hardest thing about it was for me to not use single-use plastic? What was the hardest thing for you? Huh? Single-use. I'm not talking about my shoes or my computer. Every day. Milk. Well, I could get it in glass bottles. But talk about food.
Straws.
Saying no to that. But what the straws and the plastic thing? Anything that's any takeout food. Any takeout food. Work really hard to not. Any takeout food. So I just brought my food. That's true. Right? And there was one other thing I was going to tell you. Oh, you're at a store, you're buying one thing. They put the bag, put it in there like that. Just to catch them before they did that, say thank you, I don't need that. And to be polite about it, because they're just doing their job. Just, it's not their fault, they're working hard. So just to say thank you very much, I got it. So, just train myself, and I still do that. And I think more and more people are used to that. But, okay, that's fine, or do you want them? I go ask them. Because do you need one for one thing? What?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Not hard, but with the plastic bags, when you turn them in all the time, what did they do with them?
Well, here we're lucky in this state. In this state, we're lucky because they take those plastic bags and they make them into shingles. Anything, and people, that little triangle on a thing. Oh, that's recyclable. No, that is the industry's symbol of what type of plastic is. Nothing about those 3 arrows means recyclable, but the industry will not take it off. It's really crooked, I think. But I will tell you, and because I did work in recycling too, anything that's recycled that they take and pick up in your bin, that means they have a market for it. And you can do yourself and them a favor by reading what they want and not putting anything else in there. This should be recycled. I'm putting it in. I see that little triangle. I'm putting it in because a lot of those plastics are poured, not blown, and they're really pollutants for the system. So that if you wanted to do the world a favor, that's a really important thing to do. Is just to pay attention because we're in a hurry. We're busy, but we're rich also. We live in a good world, and if we could just take that time
it's going to be better for the kids, right? They'll tell you in school, they'll learn and they'll tell you if you're not listening already, right? Now, any other comments, or, I mean, I don't want to give you a lecture.
I have a question. Could you talk more about the crows that you made, or the process?
That one. The crows, and I made those black crows because I thought, I think crows are survivors, and there's certain animals that are surviving. Like I have a story of a crow flying with a wrapper from McDonald's over to the dumpster at Louise across the street. You know? But that's that wire, so wire skeletal process, and then I'm using paper pulp, like what you make paper with. I was going to put a lot of plastic in them, and then people said they liked them better black, so I didn't. Some of them have some plastic from the ocean in it, which is, you know, it's breaking down into littler bits and bits. And so that's a different thing I can talk to you about, but that's a new process. And the herons that you see there, they'll all have some ocean plastic, like a blue, you know, something. They have found objects in them as well. Any other questions? I know it's just
quick. So there are islands in the ocean with this, literally.
Okay.
Right?
There are gyres in the ocean. Is what they are.
And so where have they located these things?
Okay. Do you know what a gyre is? When you flush the toilet, it goes like this, right? So in the ocean, there are different currents, lots and lots of different currents, and where the currents kind of bump into each other, there are gyres. And so that's where the plastic gathers. It's everywhere, but that's where it gathers. And some of it falls. It continually breaks down. It's not a standing island, but it's a larger conglomeration. And the biggest one is the Pacific one, but we've got them in the Atlantic Ocean. You could go to five gyres blogs. There are a lot more than 5. But, and if you talk to fishermen on this coast, they know, they see it. And the Sargasso Sea is on this coast, and apparently that Sargasso floating, you just pick it up and there's just bits of plastic all underneath it. And when I gather at the ocean, I mean, you know that little spirally ribbon that wraps a package, you can make it go curly? They put that on balloons. So if I'm walking next to the like the beach where the sand blows up, you just see a little bit of that sticking out, just pull it. There's a balloon on it. And the paint is gone off, so it looks like a jellyfish. And they are there. And it just kills me, you know, because let's think of other things to do besides that. Anyway, so did I answer your question at all?
Thank you.
And you will be hearing more about it because it's getting worse. And you know, I don't know. We've made this plastic thing, and it's very convenient. Nobody wants to not be convenient. I don't. And I also want my tennis shoes, and I like my computer. And it's not single use. Eventually,
What do you do with them?
Yeah. Well, you can, you know, and of course the metals in there you can give to somebody else. And I don't have an answer. But I do try to use less whenever possible and say no thank you, just because that makes you feel better. I mean, you're not saving the world, but you are taking a sort of stand and paying attention, and that's a good thing. Want to go look at some more plastic?
So thank you. We're going to do a quick walk through the gallery, and you can have another look and ask any remaining questions.